The Alpha King married the ugly Omega as punishment. At sundown, a stunning beauty stood before him. Hello, everyone. Alara Whitmore had survived 23 years of strangers judging her face, but nothing prepared her for the morning an entire kingdom decided that marrying her was severe enough to punish a king. If you enjoy stories of courage, destiny, and love that learns to see beyond appearances, subscribe and turn on notifications to help our channel grow. Now, let's return to Silvercrest, where one royal sentence was about to wound two people in very different ways. Nearly 300 wolves filled the great hall beneath towering stone arches and silver banners. When the bronze doors opened, conversation faded into an uneasy hush. Alara entered alone. Her chestnut hair was pinned neatly at her nape, her pale green eyes steady despite the gray-violet markings spreading across her left temple, cheek, and down toward the collar of her modest blue dress. She knew those looks. Curiosity, pity, then the quick downward glance people used when they wanted their disgust to appear polite. Alara kept walking. At the far end of the chamber stood Alpha King Everett Calloway. 32, dark-haired and broad-shouldered. Everett wore authority with the restraint of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to command a room. A narrow scar traced his left temple. His cool gray gaze rested first on Alara, then shifted toward Marlowe Bennett as the senior elder opened a parchment bearing the council seal. Everett Calloway, Alpha King of Silvercrest, you knowingly broke the Western marriage accord negotiated under Crown law. Everett's expression hardened. Because that accord would have surrendered the independence of 3 border pacts. Your motive has been entered into record, Marlowe replied. Your violation remains. She let the silence settle before continuing. The accord concerned the Crown's right to choose a royal marriage. Therefore, the penalty answers the offense directly. Until now, your Majesty chose whom you would refuse. Today, the Council chooses whom you will accept. A murmur swept through the nobles. Alara finally understood why she had been summoned. Her stomach turned cold. This was not merely a forced marriage. The council intended to take Everett's most personal freedom because he had defied their political bargain. And they had chosen her because they believed she would make that loss humiliating. Near the front stood Brielle Hartwell in pale silver, the noblewoman many had expected would someday become Everett's Luna. Her expression remained perfectly composed as Marlowe announced. The council names Alara Whitmore as the king's bride. Someone laughed before quickly disguising it as a cough. The scarred Omega, another whispered. Then came the words Alara would remember long after every face in that hall had faded from memory. So she's the punishment. Her fingers tightened once against her skirt. She could have lowered her eyes. She could have made herself smaller and given them the picture they wanted. An ashamed Omega grateful to stand near a king. Instead, Alara lifted her chin. Everett descended from the dais. His attention passed briefly over the markings on her skin, and she saw the exact instant he understood the council's cruelty. They had chosen someone the court considered undesirable so that every time he looked at his wife, he would remember his defeat. But Alara would have to live inside that sentence too. Did you consent to this? Everett asked when he reached her. The question was quiet enough to belong only to them. No, Your Majesty. A flicker of anger crossed his face. Not at her. Then they punished you for my decision. Alara had not expected him to understand so quickly. Behind them, another whisper rose. Imagine presenting her as queen. Everett's gaze moved toward the sound, and silence followed. Alara looked back at him. They can call me your punishment, she said softly. I won't become your shame. For the first time, Everett seemed to see something beyond the face the court had already judged. Before he could answer, afternoon sunlight shifted through the western windows. Alara's attention snapped toward it. Her hand rose instinctively to the teardrop moonstone hidden beneath her collar. Still cloudy. Still cool. She exhaled and lowered her fingers. Everett noticed. Marlowe announced that the marriage would take place at dawn. The hall erupted into whispers again, but Everett was no longer watching his council. He was watching his unwilling bride, and wondering why a woman who had faced an entire court without lowering her head suddenly looked afraid of the setting sun. By dawn, Silvercrest had transformed the punishment into ceremony. White banners hung from the gallery rails, candles burned along the aisle, and servants moved with careful efficiency beneath the watch of nobles who had come less to celebrate than to witness. Alara stood in a small antechamber beside the chapel doors while June Whitmore fastened the final pearl button at the back of her ivory gown. Her aunt had arrived before sunrise from Hollowpine, carrying no jewels, no attendants, only the quiet steadiness Alara had trusted since childhood. "You can still breathe," June murmured when she noticed Alara's rigid shoulders. "They haven't taken that from you." Alara almost smiled. "They seem determined to try." June's hand paused near the teardrop moonstone resting at Alara's throat. The stone remained cloudy beneath the morning light. For a moment, something unreadable passed across the older woman's face. "Keep this close today." "I always do." June nodded, though the answer did not seem to ease her. Before Alara could ask why, the chapel bells began. On the other side of the doors, Everett Calloway waited beneath the carved silver crest of his bloodline. He wore formal black instead of royal crimson, a choice many interpreted as defiance. Gideon Cross stood several paces behind him, expression guarded, while Marlowe Bennett held the binding document that would make the marriage law before it ever became anything resembling a union. When Alara entered, conversation dissolved into a hush. She felt the room studying the marks across her face, searching for proof that the council had succeeded in humiliating its king. Brielle Hartwell sat in the first row beside her family. Her pale gold gown caught every candle flame. As Alara passed, Brielle leaned slightly toward another woman and whispered just loudly enough to carry, at least. Punishment need not be permanent. Alara kept walking. Everett heard it too. His gaze sharpened, but he said nothing until Alara reached him. The vows were brief, legal, stripped of romance. Everett promised protection, title, and fidelity under Crown law. Alara promised loyalty to Silvercrest and honesty within the bond. When Marlowe asked Everett to place the royal ring on Alara's finger, his hand was steady. Hers was not. He noticed. Instead of rushing, he waited until she drew one slow breath and offered her hand willingly. It was a small courtesy, invisible to most of the court. Alara felt it anyway. After the final seal was pressed into wax, applause rose in scattered waves. No one cheered. The reception that followed was worse. People smiled too brightly, congratulated Everett with condolences hidden beneath polished words, and treated Alara as though she were an unpleasant clause in a political contract. She endured it until a lord she did not know lifted his glass toward Everett and said, "May your sentence prove shorter than expected." A few nearby guests laughed. Everett set down his own glass. "My wife is standing beside me." The laughter died. His tone never rose. It did not need to. The lord bowed and withdrew. Alara looked at Everett, surprised despite herself. "Thank you. You should not have needed me to say it." "No," she replied. "But that has never stopped people from needing to hear it." Something almost thoughtful entered his eyes. Later, when the crowd thinned, Everett led her to a private terrace overlooking the western gardens. The distance between them felt safer without an audience. "I want us to understand each other," he said. "You will have your own rooms, your own household, and every protection my name carries. I will not mistreat you, but I will not pretend this marriage began with affection." Alara turned toward him. "I never asked for affection." He seemed caught by the answer. "Then what do you expect from me?" "Only this. Do not let them strip away my dignity simply because marrying me wounded yours." The words landed harder than anger would have. Everett looked toward the garden below, jaw tightening. "Agreed." A late wash of amber light touched the terrace railing. Alara stiffened. Beneath her gown, the moonstone warmed against her skin. She covered it instinctively with her palm. Everett noticed the movement. "Are you unwell?" "Just tired." She stepped back before the light could shift further. "I would like to retire." He let her go, but his eyes followed her until the terrace doors closed. Alone in the corridor, Alara quickened her pace as the sun lowered toward the hills. At her throat, the cloudy stone had begun to catch a faint silver glow. The silver glow vanished the moment Alara closed the curtains of her new chambers. She stood in darkness, one hand pressed over the moonstone, waiting until its strange warmth faded. Whatever was happening, she could not afford questions. Not here, where curiosity traveled faster than kindness. By morning, she had convinced herself the change was exhaustion. Silvercrest gave her little time to reconsider. Her first duty as queen consort was to inspect the household wing with the palace steward, and before noon, she heard a sharp cry from the laundry room. A young maid sat on the floor beside an overturned basket, blood running from a cut across her palm. While others fussed over the stained linens, Alara knelt. "Let me see." The girl hesitated at the sight of her, then offered her hand. Alara wrapped it with a clean strip of cloth and asked another servant to fetch the healer. "The sheets can be washed," she said softly. "She cannot." Neither woman noticed Everett standing beyond the doorway with Gideon. The king had been crossing the corridor when the commotion stopped him. Gideon glanced sideways. Not quite what the court expected. Everett watched Alara help the maid to her feet. The court rarely expects anything useful. That afternoon brought a harsher test. A young Omega page named Clara dropped a tray outside the council chamber after Lord Harlan stepped deliberately into her path. A silver pitcher struck the floor. "Clumsy creature," Harlan snapped. "Perhaps Omegas should remain below stairs." Clara went pale and bent immediately to gather the pieces. Alara reached her first. "Leave them." Harlan stared. "Your Majesty?" The title sounded almost insulting in his mouth. Alara rose slowly. "You caused the accident. Surely you are not accusing. I watched your boot move." Several council aides had stopped nearby. Harlan's face reddened. A queen should be careful about choosing servants over nobles. Alara's pulse quickened, but her voice remained even. A noble should make that choice unnecessary. Everett heard the exchange from inside the chamber. By the time he appeared, Harlan had already retreated under the weight of watching eyes. Alara expected correction. Instead, Everett looked at the broken pitcher, then at Clara. "Were you injured?" "No, Your Majesty." "Then go." When she fled, he turned to Alara. "Harlan controls 3 council votes. Then I hope he uses them more carefully than his feet." Gideon coughed into his fist, poorly disguising amusement. Everett stared at his wife for a beat too long. "You knew confronting him could make your position harder." "My position was difficult before I spoke." She met his eyes. Silence would only have made Clara's harder too. Something in Everett's expression changed. Not warmth exactly, but the first fracture in an assumption he had never examined. That evening, Brielle arranged an intimate supper for several prominent houses and insisted the king's new wife attend. Alara recognized the trap as soon as she entered. Every woman wore elaborate court jewels and ceremonial colors, while no one had told Alara the dinner was formal. Her plain sage dress drew immediate glances. Brielle approached with flawless concern. "Oh, Alara." No one explained. "Apparently not." "How unfortunate." Alara smiled gently. "For whom?" Brielle's expression tightened. Across the table, Everett lowered his wine without drinking. He was beginning to understand that Alara did not survive cruelty by failing to feel it. She survived by refusing to hand it back. Dinner stretched toward evening. Then sunlight from the tall western windows shifted across the table and touched Alara's cheek. A strange warmth moved beneath her skin. Brielle stopped speaking. Everett's eyes narrowed. One gray-violet mark near Alara's temple had faded at its edge. Alara realized it. A heartbeat later, she rose so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "Excuse me." She hurried from the room before anyone could object. In the corridor, her moonstone pulsed warm against her chest. Behind her, the dining room door opened. Everett had followed. Everett caught up with Alara before she reached the staircase. "Wait." She stopped with her back to him as the last amber light stretched across the corridor. "I'm tired, Everett." It was the first time she had used his name, but he barely registered it. His attention had settled on the gray-violet pattern near her temple. Something changed at dinner. Alara's hand closed around the moonstone beneath her dress. "I need to go." The mark on your face faded. She turned then, fear sharpening her pale green eyes. "And now you want to examine me too?" The question stopped him. Everett remembered the nobles staring at her on the day of their sentencing, measuring her as though her appearance were public property. He stepped away from her path. "No," Alara seemed surprised. "I saw something I don't understand. That doesn't give me the right to demand an explanation from you." Some of the tension left her shoulders. "Thank you. But if it frightened you, Nathaniel may be able to help." "Not tonight." "Then not tonight." Everett watched her disappear upstairs without following. The next morning, Alara made the choice herself. She found Dr. Nathaniel Brooks in the Royal Infirmary and allowed him to inspect the markings while Everett remained several feet away. Nathaniel studied one edge through a small magnifying lens, then frowned. "Who told you these were scars?" "Everyone." "Everyone isn't a diagnosis." He touched her cheek only after she nodded permission. There's no damaged tissue. No ordinary discoloration. Whatever these are, they are part of the skin without behaving like the skin. Alara felt suddenly cold. What does that mean? It means I don't know yet. Nathaniel glanced at the teardrop pendant resting against her collarbone. And that stone. My mother's. Does it ever change? Alara remembered its silver glow. Sometimes it feels warm. Everett heard the hesitation but did not challenge her. Before Nathaniel could continue, a palace servant entered carrying a letter delivered by courier from Hollowpine. Alara recognized June Whitmore's handwriting immediately. She broke the seal with unsteady fingers. Alara, if the marks have begun changing, then I waited too long. Your mother believed distance from Royal Moonstone would keep what she feared asleep. Silvercrest was built around old Moonstone wards. If anything happens as daylight fades, do not assume you are ill. And whatever you see, remember this. Nothing is being taken from you. Something hidden may simply be waking. Alara read the final line twice. My mother knew. Nathaniel leaned forward. Knew what? I don't know. Anger rose beneath her fear. June had spent years answering questions about her face with gentle evasions. Now her dead mother seemed to have left a secret inside Alara's own body. Everett did not ask to see the letter. Do you want someone sent for your aunt? Alara folded the page. Yes. That single answer changed the course of everything. For the first time, she was choosing to uncover what her family had hidden instead of protecting their silence. But June was hours away, and evening came first. As sunset approached, the moonstone began pulsing with warmth. Alara left her chambers, unable to endure another night waiting behind closed curtains for something she could not name. She crossed into the western garden and stopped beside the fountain among white roses. The lowering sun touched her cheek. A tingling sensation moved across her skin. She raised trembling fingers to the markings and felt smoothness where familiar texture should have been. Her breath caught. The fountain offered only a broken reflection beneath moving water. She bent closer, frightened by the unfamiliar fragments staring back. Behind her, Everett's council meeting had ended early. Remembering the way she had watched the sun since the day they met, he went toward the western garden, not to corner her, but because he finally understood that sundown was what she feared. He entered as the last rim of gold touched the hills. A woman stood beside the fountain in Alara's dress, chestnut hair loosened over her shoulders, her face turned away. Everett stopped. Who are you? The woman became motionless. The sun slipped lower. Then Alara slowly turned toward her husband. For one suspended heartbeat, Everett forgot how to speak. The woman before him had Alara's chestnut hair, her pale green eyes, her sage dress, even the moonstone pendant trembling against her chest. But the gray-violet markings were gone. In their place was clear skin warmed by the last trace of evening, revealing delicate features the court had never seen. Alara watched recognition struggle against disbelief in his face, and something inside her hurt more than she expected. Alara. His voice was barely audible. She nodded. Everett took one step closer, then stopped himself. His stare moved over her as though searching for some trick. How? I don't know. You didn't know this would happen? Not like this. She pulled June's letter from her pocket and held it out. My aunt knew something. My mother did too. Apparently, everyone who could have given me answers decided silence was safer. Everett read the warning, his expression hardening. When he looked up, wonder had replaced suspicion, and that wounded her in an entirely different way. All her life, strangers had looked away too quickly. Now the same man who had barely studied his bride could not seem to look away at all. Please stop, she whispered. Stop what? Looking at me as though I became someone else. Shame crossed his face. I didn't mean, yesterday these halls called me ugly. Tonight I have the same mind, the same heart, the same memories. Yet suddenly you look astonished to find me standing here. Everett had no defense that did not sound cruel. Alara gave a small, bitter laugh. Would you have looked at me this way yesterday? The question struck with greater force than accusation. He remembered her kneeling beside the injured maid, standing between Clara and a powerful lord, enduring her wedding without surrendering her dignity. None of those things had changed with the sunset. Only his eyes had. No, he admitted. Alara blinked, surprised by the answer. I won't insult you with a lie. His voice lowered. And I don't like what the truth says about me. Footsteps sounded from the gallery. Alara instinctively turned away. No one can see me. Everett understood immediately. If the court discovered this before they understood it themselves, she would become a spectacle again, only for the opposite reason. Gideon appeared beneath the archway and halted when he saw them. His hand went to his sword before recognition slowly dawned. "Your Majesty?" "Not a word," Everett ordered. Gideon looked from Alara to the king, then bowed. "Understood." That single witness changed everything. The secret no longer belonged only to Alara, and Everett could no longer pretend the woman he had married was merely the council's punishment. "Nathaniel needs to examine what happened," he said. Alara's shoulders stiffened. "You promised the choice was mine." "It still is." Everett removed his cloak and offered it to her, not to hide ugliness now, but to protect her from curious eyes. "But whatever this is, someone knew enough to warn you. I want to know whether you're in danger." Alara studied him before accepting the cloak. "I'll speak to Nathaniel tomorrow. On one condition." "Name it." "No council, no nobles, and no one decides what happens to me because they suddenly approve of my face." Everett's gaze held hers. "You have my word." She drew the cloak around herself, making the decision irreversible. Tomorrow she would stop hiding from the question that had followed her since childhood. As Gideon cleared the corridor for their return, Everett walked beside her without touching her. Yet everything between them had changed. Near the palace doors, the moonstone flashed silver once against the dark fabric. Everett saw it. This time, so did Alara. By morning, the gray-violet markings had returned exactly as they had been before sunset. Alara sat in Nathaniel Brooks's examination room while he compared her skin with notes from the previous day. Everett remained near the door, deliberately giving her space. June Whitmore had arrived from Hollowpine before breakfast, still wearing her travel cloak. She had barely entered when Alara placed the letter on the table between them. "No more protecting me with half-truths." June looked at her niece for a long moment. "No more." Nathaniel set the moonstone pendant beneath his magnifying lens. A faint silver thread seemed trapped deep inside the cloudy stone. June drew a slow breath. "Your mother called it the moon veil." Alara touched her cheek. "What is it?" "Protection that outlived the danger it was created for." June explained that generations earlier, women in their maternal line had possessed an uncommon healing gift. Their abilities brought attention from powerful alphas who wanted more than healers. They wanted wives whose daughters might inherit the same gift. One of Alara's ancestors turned to old lunar magic for protection. "The moon veil did not create ugliness," June said. "It altered how daylight revealed the women who carried it, obscuring the features others had once coveted. After sundown, when lunar influence strengthened, the veil loosened." Nathaniel looked toward Alara. "That fits what we've observed. It also explains why I found no scar tissue." Everett's gaze shifted to the pendant. "And silver crest?" June nodded. "Your palace stands within ancient royal moonstone wards." Alara's mother believed distance from them would keep the inherited spell quiet. Bringing her here awakened it fully. Alara stared at her aunt. "So mother knew this could happen." "She suspected. And you let me spend my life believing there was something wrong with my face." June flinched. "We were afraid knowledge would lead someone to you." "Someone already did." Alara's voice broke despite her effort to steady it. "Every cruel child. Every stranger who stared. Every person who decided what I deserved before I spoke. You protected me from hunters who may never have come, but you left me alone with everyone who did." June's eyes filled. She offered no excuse. "You're right." The simple admission hurt less than another justification would have. Nathaniel turned the pendant beneath the lens. "There's something we still don't know. The moon veil is responding more strongly each evening. I can explain why it wakes here. I cannot yet predict whether the pattern will stabilize." Everett's posture tightened. "Could it harm her?" "I have no evidence that it will. I also won't pretend certainty." Alara reached for the pendant. "Then we watch it. We don't lock me away because people might want what they see." Everett answered before June could. "Agreed." That evening, he found Alara alone in the library as sunset approached. She did not hide when he entered. "Are you here to see whether I change again?" "No." Everett took the chair opposite hers instead of standing over her. "I came because I owe you an answer." "To what?" "The question you asked in the garden." Alara went still. He continued. "I was stunned by your face. I won't lie about that. But what troubles me is how easily beauty made me curious when your character should have done it sooner." The fading daylight reached her skin. One marking softened along her cheek. Everett kept his attention on her eyes. "Don't become gentle because you discovered I can look different," she said. "Then tell me what would mean something. Respect me when the marks are there. Believe me when the room doesn't. Give me a choice even when you think you know what is best for me." Everett nodded. "Then that is where I start." The sun disappeared. Silver stirred inside the pendant, and the moon veil receded. Alara watched him carefully. His gaze did not wander. For the first time, the silence between them felt less like distance and more like possibility. Then the library door opened. Brielle Hartwell stood frozen on the threshold. Her eyes moved from Alara's transformed face to the glowing moonstone, then to Everett. Shock sharpened into understanding. Everett rose, but the secret had already crossed the one boundary he could no longer protect. Brielle slowly stepped backward. "So this," she whispered, "is what you've been hiding." Brielle did not shout. She did something more dangerous. By breakfast, she had requested a formal inquiry into concealed enchantment within the royal marriage, and by noon, the phrase had spread through Silvercrest. Everett ordered the gossip stopped, but Brielle invoked an old crown law before Marlowe Bennett could dismiss her complaint. "If unknown magic touches the royal bloodline," Brielle said before the council, "the court is entitled to witness its nature." "You want a spectacle?" Everett replied. "I want the truth." "Then ask Alara instead of putting her on display." Alara, seated beside him, heard the anger beneath his restraint. Days earlier, he might have decided what was best for her without asking. Now he turned. "You can refuse." Every face shifted toward Alara. She remembered closed curtains, June's frightened silence, and a lifetime spent carrying shame for something she had never understood. "No," she said. "I'll appear at sundown." Everett's expression tightened. "You owe them nothing." "I know." She met his eyes. "That's why the choice matters." At sunset, the ceremonial hall filled beyond capacity. Nathaniel stood with June near the dais. Gideon guarded the doors. Alara entered wearing a simple ivory gown and her mother's teardrop moonstone. Nothing concealed the gray violet markings across her temple, cheek, and neck. Brielle watched from among the noble houses. "Tell them," Alara said to June. Her aunt stepped forward. With Nathaniel confirming what he had observed, June revealed the Moonvale's history. Women in Alara's maternal line had carried a rare healing gift, and powerful alphas once pursued them for their beauty, their abilities, and the daughters they might produce. The enchantment had been created not to manufacture beauty, but to conceal what predatory men wanted to possess. "Alara never cast it," Nathaniel said. "She inherited it." Brielle's composure faltered. "Then why hide the truth?" Alara answered before June could. "Because the women before me learned that being desired could become another kind of cage." At that moment, the sinking sun reached the western windows. Silver awakened inside the moonstone. The markings along Alara's temple began to recede. A collective breath moved through the chamber as the moon veil loosened across her cheek and neck, revealing the face Everett had first seen beside the fountain. The transformation took only moments. The court's transformation was faster. Men who had once smirked straightened in astonishment. Women who had offered pity leaned forward. Someone whispered, "She's stunning." Another murmured, "How extraordinary." One nobleman actually rose from his seat. Alara looked across those suddenly admiring faces, and the cruelty of it nearly stole her breath. Everett saw it too. He descended from the dais and stood beside her. "Sit down." The nobleman obeyed. Everett surveyed the chamber. "Which woman are you honoring now? The same woman you refused to honor when you thought her ugly?" No one answered. Her face changed. Did her character? His voice remained controlled, making every word cut deeper. Was she less courageous when you laughed at her? Less compassionate when she cared for your servants? Less worthy when you believed these markings made her something to be ashamed of? Silence answered him. "You called her my punishment." Everett looked across the nobles who had whispered on the day of his sentencing. "The punishment was never marrying Alara. It was discovering how easily I allowed this court's prejudice to shape what I saw." Alara turned toward him. He did not study the beauty the hall had suddenly discovered. His eyes remained on hers. "And that failure was mine." Brielle's cheeks burned. "Her bloodline still changes everything. A royal healer's descendant has political value." Everett faced her. "That sentence is exactly why the moon veil had to exist." Brielle fell silent. Then Marlowe rose with the original marriage record in her hands. There is one legal consequence we cannot ignore. Everett's expression hardened. What consequence? The council selected Alara under a formally recorded assumption that she possessed no politically significant lineage. Tonight proves that assumption false. Uneasy murmurs spread through the chamber. Alara's fingers closed around her moonstone. Marlowe continued. The council may review the terms under which this marriage was imposed. More importantly, Crown law gives Alara herself the right to petition for annulment. If she exercises that right, neither the council nor the Crown may compel her into another union. Everett went completely still. The choice stolen from both of them had finally returned, but this time it belonged to Alara. He looked at her and extended his hand without taking hers. Whatever you decide, he said quietly, this time it will be yours. Alara stared at his open palm. Then Marlowe placed the annulment petition on the table before her. Everett did not close his hand around Alara's. He left the choice where it belonged, palm open between them, until she placed her fingers in his. The next morning, every council seat was occupied before the first bell. Marlowe Bennett stood at the center with two documents: the council's proposal to review the punishment marriage and a new contract recognizing Alara's politically significant lineage. If the existing union is annulled, Marlowe said, the Crown could enter a new marriage reflecting Lady Whitmore's recognized standing. Everett looked at the second document. Recognized standing. His voice was quiet. Days ago, this council considered her suitable because marrying her would humiliate me. Now you discover something valuable in her blood, and suddenly she deserves a more respectable contract. No one answered. Brielle sat among the noble houses, stripped of yesterday's certainty. Nathaniel's findings and June's testimony had already established that Alara neither created nor knowingly manipulated the Moonveil. Marlowe lowered the parchment. The law permits the council to correct an agreement when material assumptions prove false. Then correct your assumptions. Everett rose. Not my wife. He descended from the dais and stopped beside Alara. She wore a simple dark blue gown, her mother's moonstone resting at her throat. Morning had returned the familiar gray-violet markings to her skin. Everett never glanced at them. I reject the council's proposal. A councilman leaned forward. Your Majesty, a new contract would restore the dignity of the Crown. By declaring Alara worthy only after learning that her lineage has political value? Everett shook his head. No. The dignity that needs restoring belongs to the woman this council used as an instrument of punishment. Alara's breath caught. Everett took the original marriage record from Marlowe and placed it on the table. But rejecting your proposal does not mean I intend to keep Alara bound to a marriage she never chose. He turned toward her. The entire chamber seemed to disappear from his attention. If you want an annulment, I will not oppose it. Alara searched his face. Even if it means I leave Silvercrest. A flicker of pain crossed his eyes. Especially then. Freedom that depends on choosing me is not freedom. The words settled over the chamber. Everett removed the royal signet from his finger and set it beside the record. If Alara petitions for annulment, she will retain her title until she chooses otherwise, along with her residence, protection, and full independence. No council will trade her into another alliance. No king will decide for her. For the first time since entering Silvercrest, Alara was not being offered a better cage. She was being shown an open door. Brielle rose slowly from her seat. Alara. The room tightened. Brielle's practiced elegance was gone. What I did was cruel. I told myself I was defending the crown, but I was defending the future I thought should have been mine. Alara studied her. You hurt me before you knew anything about me. I know. And discovering my face changed nothing about what you did. Brielle lowered her eyes. I know that too. Alara did not offer easy forgiveness. Then remember it. Brielle nodded and sat down. Marlowe placed the annulment petition before Alara. The decision requires only your signature. Everett stepped away from the table. He did not ask her to stay. That mattered more than any declaration he could have made. Alara touched the pen, then withdrew her hand. I won't decide while hundreds of people are waiting to see which choice satisfies them. Marlowe inclined her head. Then you will decide privately. She sealed the petition and gave it to Alara. The council adjourned without a vote. Later, Nathaniel confirmed that the moon veil had stabilized. Silvercrest's wards had awakened the inherited enchantment but were not harming her. June found Alara afterward and apologized without defending the years of silence. This time, Alara allowed her aunt to hold her. Near evening, she returned to her chambers and found a small envelope beneath the door. Everett had sent no jewelry, no command, no plea, only a handwritten note. If you are willing, meet me in the Western Garden tomorrow before sundown. Alara looked at the unsigned annulment petition on her desk, then at her reflection, the moon veil still visible across her face. For the first time, tomorrow did not frighten her because of what sunset might reveal. It mattered because before the sun went down, she would finally decide whom she wanted to be when no one else was choosing for her. By the time Alara entered the Western Garden the next evening, the annulment was already legal. That morning, with Marlowe Bennett and 2 council witnesses present, she had signed the petition ending the marriage imposed as Everett's punishment. He had added his signature without argument. No crown privilege, no condition, no attempt to keep her. For the first time since Alara had entered Silvercrest, nothing bound them except what they might choose next. Everett waited beside the fountain among the white roses, dressed simply in charcoal, his crown nowhere in sight. The sun still hung above the hills. Alara's moon veil remained fully visible across her temple, cheek, and neck. His eyes found hers and stayed there. You came. I almost didn't. He nodded. I would have understood. That answer carried more weight than persuasion could have. Alara approached the fountain. Everett held the original punishment decree in his hand. Marlowe said this no longer has legal force. He offered it to her. I thought you should decide what remains of it. Alara took the parchment bearing the seal that had once reduced her to someone else's sentence. When I first saw you in that hall, Everett said, I understood why they had chosen you before I understood who they had chosen. He did not soften the confession. I let their judgment become mine. Alara looked at him. And then you saw me at sundown. Yes. And everything changed. Not everything. Everett stepped nearer, careful not to close the distance completely. My attraction changed. My understanding didn't change fast enough. His voice lowered. You had already shown me courage, kindness, loyalty to people who had nothing to offer you. I noticed those things, but I still needed your beauty too. Shock me into looking closer. I will regret that longer than you may ever know. Alara's fingers tightened around the decree. My mother believed the moon veil could reveal what kind of man stood before me. Then I failed its first test. You did. He accepted the words without flinching. Alara looked toward the lowering sun. But you didn't fail the last one. She tore the powerless decree through the council seal. Everett watched the pieces fall into the fountain. That marriage is over, she said. Pain crossed his face, though he did not reach for her. Then you're free. Yes. She stepped closer. Which means if I stay now, it is because I choose to. Everett went still. Alara, no punishment. No council order. No debt between us. Her eyes glistened. If you still want the woman standing here, ask her. He glanced toward the horizon, then back to the markings still covering her face. Before the sun goes down, a small smile trembled across her mouth. Especially before the sun goes down. Alpha King Everett Calloway lowered himself to one knee. There was no court to impress, no law demanding obedience, no audience waiting to approve his choice. Alara Whitmore, I cannot promise I will never fail you. I can promise I will never again confuse your worth with what the world sees. Will you choose me freely as your husband and mate? Tears slipped down her cheeks. Yes. Everett closed his eyes for one brief second before rising. He did not touch her until she reached for him first. Their hands joined while the moon veil was still visible. Only then did the sun meet the horizon. The moonstone warmed between them, silver spreading through its cloudy center as the markings slowly disappeared. Everett never looked away from her eyes. When the transformation ended, Alara whispered, Aren't you going to stare? His smile was quiet. I already chose you. Weeks later, Marlowe recorded their voluntary marriage and, at Alara's request, Silvercrest abolished the law allowing marriage to be used as punishment. Nathaniel preserved the truth of the moon veil so its history could never again be buried in fear, and June gave Alara her mother's remaining letters, finally. Allowing love to exist without secrecy. Brielle offered an apology without excuses. Alara accepted it without pretending forgiveness erased memory. And every evening afterward, Alara still changed with the fading light. Everett eventually stopped noticing when it happened. because Sundown had revealed a stunning beauty to the Alpha King. But the greater revelation was the woman who had been standing before him all along.